All right, what's
Hey,
happening, everybody? I am your guy for this recording, Ronimus Prime. Don't ask me why. No, you can't be Ronimus Prime because that's me. I was born in 1984 when the Transformers came out. So, sucks for y'all. Y'all don't get that. I am an admin in Secret Society of Black Comics. Uh, I'm also with my partner here, one of my partners in that group, Alan Lynch. He is also an admin, and well, we're gonna be talking. This is our first video thing, so we're gonna make these mistakes, but we're gonna talk and have a good conversation. Starting off, Alan, tell us about yourself. I know we've
right.
spoken. I know you were born a British citizen. Just start off. What was that like? You
Yeah.
know,
So I'll tell a little bit about myself. So my name is Alan Lynch. I go by Nigel. So if you're looking for any books and you see a book and it says Nigel Lynch, it's me that wrote it. Uh, I was born in England. I live in the Caribbean, and I have mixed heritage Caribbean parents. So basically, I draw from a lot of different cultures and a lot of different experiences. I was reading comic books from a very early age. The first comic book I can remember getting into was a Spider-Man book, and I was at the age of 4. And I can actually remember this book clearly because I would constantly read this book cover to cover, and I would actually read it backwards sometimes. It was the first edition of where Spider-Man featured Speed Demon for the first time, and that was like the first comic book I could remember.
you remember
And I
about what?
always, pardon me?
You remember? You said you were 4. What
Yeah, it
year
was
was
about
that?
4. I can't remember the year. 4, that would be what? That'd be sometime in the early 80s. Let me say the early
You ju-
80s.
you you just turned 50 this year, didn't you?
49, 49,
49.
49.
Uh, so that would
Yeah.
be what, 74, 75?
Nah, I was born in 76. So basically, you're looking at
Oh, okay.
76.
Yeah,
Yeah, so about 80, 81, 82 or so.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so that's when I first started. That's the first comic book I can remember. And it was a different time then. Comic books was all over the place. Everybody read comic books in the Caribbean. You couldn't go anywhere and not see a comic book from a doctor's office, supermarket. So everyone knew superheroes. Everybody knew Archie comic books, that kind of stuff. And when I was about 11 years old, I inherited my uncle's collection from England, and he just sent a whole wave of different comic books. And what was interesting was, if you don't know the history of Marvel when it comes to printing, Marvel UK comic books were different from Marvel America, and they would do a
Mhm.
reprint. But what they would do is take older issues without color and combine them into one book that was about the size of a magazine. So I had a lot of so by doing that, I actually got to read a lot of the older comic books. So a comic book would have in part of a Captain America story, part of a Spider-Man story, and part of an Iron Man story will be in black and white. And they would kind of just issue them out of order, meaning that once the story run was finished, you didn't know where it was going to jump to, forwards or backwards.
Yeah, I've
But it
heard
meant that,
that's common with foreign editions. Not
yeah,
just not just Marvel UK, but like French editions, Spanish editions were like that. It's more of a they did more of almost an anthology
yeah, yeah,
style,
yeah.
not
So
like
it,
the. No, go ahead, man.
yeah, so what it does though, it meant that you got access to older comic books, and you got to read stuff that wouldn't have been readily available at the time in the shops and stuff because you're reading early Iron Man, that kind of stuff. And what was interesting too, I used to follow the Transformers comics books, and the Marvel UK, they had the rights to create their own book. So the books had two different continuities. So if you read a Marvel UK Transformer book, it wasn't the same story as the American comic book. And
Mm.
eventually they kind of merged, or there's a lot of there's a history about
They,
about
they,
it. Check it
they
out on
did
YouTube.
merge them. Yeah, and I don't mean Skybound actually has a Kickstarter. For the obviously people, we have a admin private chat, and uh I sent that. Skybound has a Kickstarter for that has the complete uh US run and the UK print
UK?
run. Obviously, when you look, yeah, oh yeah, when you look, it
Yeah.
doesn't have the Marvel logoing because they don't have the licensing to that. But yeah, it's 2 volumes and it's the complete run. Um, I mean, to that matter, that's just like the animated series. There's certain like oh my goodness, Ultra Magnus. Ultra Magnus
Yeah.
didn't debut in the US. He debuted in the Japanese Transformers. I believe on the 25th anniversary edition of the Transformers movie, they have that episode on there.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, even after Transformers ended in the US, it
It went on
continued
in Japan.
on. Yeah,
In
it
Japan,
continued on
yeah.
in Japan. Oh my God, the Headmaster series is
Yeah, they did.
terrible.
They did the
Oh
Headmaster series.
Jesus! Oh my
Yeah,
God, it's bad.
yeah. So
Man,
I
I
was
have it.
yeah, I
Go ahead, man.
I was a Transformer fan for comic books. So I could actually remember when the Marvel Comics did the Headmasters as a 5-issue series. When these Transformers
Mhm.
went to this planet and then they got their heads cut off and Scorponok and stuff like that. So yeah, I was an avid fan. Stepped away from the fandom for a couple of years. Came back. The landscape had kind of changed. I was always into art, and I decided, you know what, I want to kind of. I always wanted to do a comic book, so I kind of linked up with some friends, and we started to do comic books, and that was about 18 years ago. So I was writing comic books for about 18 years, and I had finished my. I'd done a series that was supposed to be 8 issues, and I got as far as 5, and then the momentum started to kind of drop off because when you're an indie creator, you have to kind of keep a certain set of momentum going because you have to keep pushing, you got to keep releasing. And one of the things that kind of messed me up was I reached my first trade. So I had 4 issues, combined them into a trade. And once I kind of hit the trade status, it was like, where do I go from here? And I kind of got into a slump. And then I missed a year. And then it was hard to kind of get the crew back together. And the book kind of stalled. But one of the good things was I was still in comics. I was still helping other people create. I wrote a book with a friend of mine called Matthew Clark that was published by Abrams. And I did some other stuff. I worked for the US Embassy, and I did some books on basically social issues. So I did books on human trafficking within the US Embassy. I did book on domestic violence. There was another one. Can't remember the other one, but so I've always been kind of just constantly working. I worked with the Barbados government back in the time of COVID. We did some comics to kind of educate people on COVID, and it was kind of funny because no one knew what COVID was. So looking back at it now, the information is it's kind of weird, kind of off. But it was when everybody was just kind of guessing at what COVID was and how it could spread.
Yeah, and they
And
didn't realize that COVID or the coronavirus was not a new virus, just this particular strand. Um,
yeah,
I don't know how it was in Barbados, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I kind of miss it because so well, let me explain why. Let me explain why, right? Because I worked throughout the whole pandemic. Like I worked in a quote unquote essential industry. I worked for FedEx. So I didn't get laid off. So I didn't get any of in my country. I didn't get any of that unemployment money that was keeping people at home. But I'll tell you why I miss COVID because the freeway was beautiful, bruh.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
in the unit, I know you said that you lived in the U.S. for a little bit,
Mhm.
but where I'm at in my state, Interstate 5 is a main thoroughfare. It is the main corridor. It's the main vein that
Mhm.
to go north and south you need to get on. Man, it was beautiful. I could get on the freeway and do 25 miles an hour. There was no cars. I could just drive slow. I mean, we had state roads, like 512, bruh. You sit on this some bitch and you see just deer leisurely walking, and
Yeah,
there's 512
yeah, it
is
was.
it's a busy thoroughfare. I don't know how it was in Barbados, but
It
I
was.
mean,
It was. It was. Yeah, it was interesting.
great in the
What
U.S.
it, what it was the closest you would kind of see you coming to witness what it would be like in, when they do these movies and the human population is cut in half and nature kind of takes over. And so we kind of had that. Yeah, you saw more animals, it was quieter, it was different. uh it was interesting. It was an
The first,
interesting
yeah,
thing.
bro. So I'm pretty sure I caught COVID, but that was back in January when we really didn't know. I had went to Vegas, so my first and second time going to Las Vegas was in 2020. I went in January. You see everything and you see all the people. I went when Vegas reopened, which was June the 6th. Um,
Mm.
I never seen I've never seen a tourist spot that normally has probably 30 to 40,000 people a day on it have less than 3,000 people. And for exercise, I walked the entire strip, which is about 4.5 miles. It runs east to west. And it was just
Mm.
seeing how, sorry, people, me moving my head. That's just me thinking about it. Just how empty it was. You just missed the freeway system. And like you said, you saw more animals out on the road. The air was a little bit fresher, because people weren't
Yeah.
driving. I mean, realistically, the only industries that were shut down were entertainment. There were, at least in my country, there were a lot of industries that were
Mm.
considered essential. So, but yeah, that's what I miss. I don't celebrate the loss of life, I don't understand how stay 6 feet away and wash your damn hands translated to buy up all the hand sanitizer, the baby wipes, and all of the toilet paper.
Oh,
Man,
yeah.
I went into a Walmart and when they put out a fresh pallet of toilet paper, and I watched people snatch that shit up like Tickle Me Elmo back in '96. I
Yeah.
used to do Facebook Lives, and for anybody that doesn't know, Facebook, due to their policy changes, so a lot of your old live recordings that you had, they've jettisoned those, so you can't pull those up anymore. But bro, I remember I was walking through grocery stores just making fun of people. I'm like, this is ridiculous. 6 feet apart, cover your mouth, wash your hands, didn't translate to bottle of toilet paper and wipe your ass. You should have been doing that. I didn't think that a
Yeah.
pandemic would have to teach people how to be sanitary, but um, and you actually answered a question that I was going to ask you was how easy was it to get comics in Barbados? Because I know everything has to be shipped. I imagine that made it a little bit more expensive. But you pretty much answered. You said they were everywhere. So uh,
Mm.
yeah,
You mean in terms of, you mean comic books? Getting comic books as a kid, or
yeah, getting them like the ease of access. Like here,
okay? So back in the day when I was younger, up to about my teenage teens, when I was still buying comic books, I could go into 95% of the supermarkets and just pull a comic book from by the cash register. They didn't have every book, but there were books that were constant staples. So you could
yeah, probably
guarantee to
like a
get
top 10.
you could get a Superman, Spider-Man, Conan, Hulk, Batman, X-Men. You get your Archies, Iron Man, and then basically you'd get other titles coming in and out depending on what the new sellers brought in. Because what would happen, the new sellers would just bring in books. And for us, a comic book was a comic, meaning we just read anything. When I was in school, if a guy came to school with a comic book, you would say, "Can I get a read off of that?" And somebody would say, "Well, you gotta ask Charles. Charles is next." Or you come and see a group of guys sitting down reading a book, and you say that, "Yeah, I could get next read," and the guy would say, "You gotta ask so and so," and you had to hunt through the whole school to find out who the book belonged to get a read. And at the end of the day, right, whoever had the comic book usually went home with the comic book. Sometimes you'd come in and the book would stay in school for like 2 weeks until, and if nobody didn't want it, somebody would just take it up. So it was this thing that everybody read, it was passed along. And what I would say would be is like, so I read the whole, let's say, Secret Wars back in the day when it first came out, but I wouldn't have read it in order. I would have read like Secret Wars 2, 3, maybe 6, then see 1 someplace, read 12, and just that's how it would be. You know what I mean? And there was no way of, or if you went into, let's say you went into a really old supermarket and you went digging, they may have some back issues and stuff. Maybe like, wow, and you'd grab a bunch of older books. But you kind of felt the impact of comic books was different. So I remember reading books, same Secret Wars, when Ben Grimm was left on the battle planet. And you felt, okay, as a Fantastic Four fan, what does that mean? No more Ben Grimm. And it was a little different from how we know today when we see things happen in a comic book. Nah, that's not gonna, you know what I mean? If Spider-Man dies, you know he's coming back. If there's no, you know what I mean? They used to say like the only people in comic books that stays dead is Uncle Ben and I think Gwen, but everybody else has come back. Osborn,
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Yeah, he hasn't come back.
Yeah, but it's because of the way they killed him. I have Marvel. That's so for people that want to know, that's Marvel graphic novel number 1. I have that. It's the death of Captain Marvel. Uncle Ben stays dead because of what it means for Peter. Because it's the basis of his, not only his superhero identity, but it's the basis of his real life personality. But Captain Marvel stays dead because he was the first character to really die of cancer. I mean, you know, I read that story about 2, maybe 3 years ago, and I'm like, you know, okay, like for a dude dying of cancer who's supposed to be withering away, he's still pretty damn big, you know. But you know, I'm like, I ain't never seen nobody die of cancer like this, but okay. But you know, this is also let's see, I just turned 41 a week ago. I was born in 84, so I think Marvel graphic novel number 1 came out in 82. You know, for that time period, that was groundbreaking. And so I just think, and for what I understand, when I got back in the hobby, that was the rule. Like, because of what Uncle Ben meant, he stays dead. And because of how Captain Marvel died, he stays dead. Gwen Stacy used to be one of those characters, but obviously we know that not to be true. Technically, she's still dead in the 616, but I mean, you know, she's not I don't think it holds as much weight as Uncle Ben. And
so a lot of things with comics kind of changed. So to me, it takes a lot of it takes a little bit away from it for me, knowing that whatever happens, good or bad, it's not going to stick.
Yeah, death has a revolving door, and that's something we complained about. Yeah, I mean, I got back into, I guess if you want, we could segue to me. Like I said, I was born in 84. I mean, as a kid, you know, comics, video games, I was a fan of the X-Men TV series. I had a few comics as a kid, but I didn't buy hardcore like that. I think I was always like a fan of comics via the X-Men TV series, Spider-Man TV series. I remember showing my age here. I had one of the old Spider-Man VHSs, and this was a VHS of the original Spider-Man series from like the 60s. It had that and like another episode on there or something like that, you know, back when you had to use VHS to get videos and stuff like that. And, you know, like most kids, you like them as a kid. As you become a teen, you get interested in other things, anime started making its way over into the US. I got back into comics because of the X-Men films. The X-Men just
Mhm.
always resonated with me, and I'm still a big X-Men fan. If I were to show you all my CLZ page, uh, CLZ being a comic book collecting database, cataloging software, it would show you that I own more X-Men comics than anything else. I have a complete run from 94 to 325. And I almost have a complete run from 94 to 544. That's actually one of the things I'm working on. Um, but uh, I got back in because of the movies, and I even bought some of the issues that I could remember as a kid. There was something else I was going to say, but I'll probably remember it in a minute. But I'll let you keep going. Oh yeah. Well, shit. Actually, I can't remember it now, but I'll probably remember it in a little bit. But go ahead, man. Continue on.
Yeah, but so that's basically to know. So I got back. I never kind of left the indie scene since I was creating comics. I've I think I've produced a comic book every year since I've started, sometimes two. And but what I've done is I've kind of I believe I've improved. You kind of get better. You should get better. Anything you do for so long. Certain mistakes and different things that I've learned about making comic books. There's little things you pick up along the way. Uh, you learn about working with others, people to avoid, different setbacks in terms of the production and printing and that kind of stuff. So I think a little bit before COVID, I started a new series, which is the Diary of the Stray Dogs, which is what I'm working on now, and that's predominantly what I am kind of writing and producing right now. And that was a series that kind of got started, but in order for it to go forward, there was a lot of hiccups and mistakes and different things that something would happen. The original book that I wrote, the artist kind of got busy and I had to kind of shelve that book. Then I started another book in the series, and that also got held up in like development hell. Kind of, we're still working on it, but the artist was busy. Life got in the way. So then, with these different setbacks, what I had to kind of do was keep pivoting. So then I wrote The Wounded, and that got produced. And then I wrote something else, and that got produced. So these little setbacks came about, but it didn't kind of stop me from producing the books. But it wouldn't have been where it is right now without those things, because it caused me to step outside of my circle and look for international artists. So I've worked with people from Spain, Brazil, Philippines, uh, Italy, Canada, all over the world. And that was because the landscape of comics and the way how things were now is a lot different from when I started. When we started, you kind of worked with who you knew and who was around you. But with the internet, we could work with anyone in the world. Books are produced mainly digitally now. So it means that
Yeah,
you can get
globalization.
the page. Yeah, get the pages digitally. There was a time when most of the artists kind of did things by hand, or if they, it was, it's, but things have changed. Technology has kind of changed the landscape. It's made
Yeah.
things easier, and it's kind of made things better, in some cases made things worse.
I mean, just in general, just as I was saying, like the globalization of anything. I mean, Marvel had a ton of artists from the '90s that were Spanish artists.
Mhm.
They had a bunch that were Spanish artists in the mid 2000s. Uh, there are the early aughts, as they say, that would be 2000 to 2010. One of my favorite artists was Salvador LaRocca. Uh,
Mhm.
I have a very I did a poor job in trimming it many years ago, but it's a Black Panther cover. I think it's Black Panther Volume 3, number 34. I have that on my wall, and that was a Salvador LaRocca cover. He was also doing X-Men Volume 2, which I think at that point it was it Legends, I think, I can't remember, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you worked with artists all over the world. I mean, Marvel has a Disney Plus show where they talk to a woman. She's an Afro Latina that lives in Spain, and she talks a little bit about what it was like growing up there and what that meant. And she's an artist that lives there. Marvel has an artist. Dan Slott was doing some book at the time, and they were talking about his process. But the guy that was collaborating with him with the art was a digital artist, Photoshop and whatnot. But he lived in like one of those like beach trailers in California, and like you said, and it wasn't just in comics. It used to be you had to like be in New York, where for a very long time, DC Comics was headquartered there. I believe they're in Burbank now. They've been in Burbank for like 10 years or so, maybe. Obviously, Marvel is still headquartered there, but I mean, I want to say maybe some point in the 80s, 90s, anybody watching, feel free to drop us a message and correct us. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but like, people started being able to live further and further away as mail systems get better. You can mail pages in. People don't realize that an issue that comes out in May, they were working on that 3 months ago, to get it ready and finalize things. And so, that doesn't surprise me. And it's good that you have that type of experience dealing with artists from all over the world. I imagine that was, like you said, challenging and yet fun at the same time, especially overcoming like some language barriers. I imagine had to be there.
Yeah, so very, very, very little again because of technology and Google Translate. You didn't have it. You more had language barriers in terms of cultural phrasing or things not translating to mean the same thing. So that's sometimes where you would get a little bit issue. Yeah, so it kind of taught me to try to be as clear as possible, explain things as clear as possible. So it kind of improved my writing and that kind of stuff too. Because when you write
he'll be back. Don't worry. Oh, he's back.
Yeah. So it kind of improved my writing because my scripts had to become a lot clearer because I was dealing with people who English wasn't their first language or they were from a different culture. So I had to kind of explain things, you know what I mean? So, but I would say that a lot of the people that I kind of worked with, I would consider them to be friends because of when you're working with a book and both of you are putting this, you're all into it, and you could kind of see the influence from the artist or the colorist, you kind of really appreciate that. It's not a one-man show. It's not, whenever you see my book, yeah, I may have written the script, but a lot of what you see is the team pouring their heart into it. There's things in the book. If you had to ask me or show me, I would have to say, well, that's not me. That's the artist. In terms of the artist came up with our concept, or we discussed it and the artist came up with the idea and I said, run with it. Or he told me, well, I think you could do better on this page, or this page feels a little lackluster. And then it will cause me to go back and rewrite it and come back again. So it kind of shows that the artist cares as much for the project as I do.
Yeah. I mean, people don't realize that collaborative effort and team cohesion does translate into the stories. I mean, you see it in film, you see it in comics. I mean, Claremont and Burns' run on X-Men, obviously iconic. I mean, and it worked until it didn't work anymore. I mean, I was trying to think, like Salvador LaRocca. I mean, he would do covers and he would have the same color artist, Liquid. I don't know if that was a singular person or a studio, but they
Mhm.
always put out fantastic work. But I mean, you see these things, these creative teams, and I want to say in a way can almost become like a symbiotic relationship, especially if you get and you do it long enough. It's like, oh, I don't even have to talk to so and so. They already know what I'm thinking when they see it. If as few words as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
There was something that you said a while ago. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, I'll get to it in a moment. But like, yeah, that's really important. And we definitely speaking of which, like Claremont and Byrne, like when you look at their X-Men stuff, top notch, right? Uh, Obviously, you look at it with fresh eyes, and you're like, there's some areas where both of them could have improved. But then you fast forward and you look at the Claremont and Byrne run on Justice League in the mid 2000s. It was terrible. You could tell they like barely talked. It was here's the script, draw it, yada yada yada. There was no cohesion, no effort. It was just a marketing ploy, like, oh, these two are together again, and but there's no chemistry. That's the word I was looking for. And it's always
Right,
good
right.
to have that. And that translates to the page. It translates to film. That's why you see certain people and you start to wonder, like, these guys always worked together. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, uh, John Candy. All of those guys had a chemistry. They all also started in the same places. Second City. Um, you look at currently Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan. You know, uh, there's a team there. I mean, you look at Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. You see what they created. Like that person. Their strengths, and you can tailor things, and that person is able to come to you and say, "Hey, might need to do this differently." Yada yada yada. You're able to feed off of each other. Um, and it was something you were basically talking about, like pacing, and working on that. And it reminded me of Alan Moore, how he was contracted to do Watchmen for 12 issues, but he realized early on he only had enough, for like 6 issues. And so having to think and work and come up with enough to fill out 12 issues. But that was just one of those, like, oh, this made me think of this thing, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Moving along, man. So with your writing style, how important is it to infuse like island culture? Because I know it's prevalent, it's present and prevalent in Diary of Stray Dogs 1 and 2, but it's not overhanded. Like it's enough that you know that it's there, but it's not so there that it's like you get lost in translation.
Um, that's a kind of tricky question to answer in terms of I don't think of it. I don't think about it. So
Mm.
it's not as not important, but I try not to force it. So I have another book in the series uh, called Critical Ops Task Force. And there is a character also from the Caribbean, but he's the only character from the Caribbean. So you don't see as much of the Caribbean influence in the story. But if I try to enforce or infuse it, it will come off as forced. So for
Mhm.
me, it always boils down to does this add or take away from the story? Is this going to make the story better or is it going to make it worse? With the Dirty Stray Dogs, um, I was able to bring out more of the Caribbean culture in the main protagonist because the way how the character was, her culture was a part of her personality. So it was in her speech. She hadn't changed who she was, and she was kind of torn about going back to the island, and also about leaving the island. So therefore, the Caribbean story was kind of tied into that there. Uh, but it wasn't, as I said, it was something that I found that was too hard to put in. I'd kind of just lay off of it. What I will tend to do is I wouldn't shy away from it. So there's other books I did, and if I do have a character, he can be Caribbean and he does have a certain way he speaks or certain foods, dress, culture, whatever. If it, as I said, if it works with your story, if it's entertaining, if somebody's gonna get it and say, I like this or whatever, I'll put it in. But equally, if there was a story and I couldn't put it in, but the story was still good and entertaining, I could leave it out for now. There's always time to kind of come back later and do something. You don't have to put. That's one of the things I kind of learned when I first started, and I have to try it now sometimes. Is I don't have to put every single thing into the book. Sometimes a lot of stuff I have to leave off the page and in the script.
Sometimes a little goes a long way. And what you said, it reminds me of a short story writing class that I took when I went to college the first time, and I've been to college like 2 or 3 times. And one thing he said was like when you do character description, like when you're a kid, you introduce a character, you kind of take that paragraph to describe the character. And what this teacher taught me was you can introduce a character and describe them throughout the entire story. You don't have to do it all at once. And just these story writing tools that you learn. Once again, like going back to the infusion of the Caribbean culture, I like that you made it a part of your lead character, and you did it in a manner where it was additive. It didn't feel like a roadblock, like you said, something that was so uniquely and culturally tied to the Caribbean to a point where if you weren't from the islands, you really would not understand what it is you're looking at. Like, I understand what you mean. Like, you could leave that out and explain it later when you could really dedicate page space to that, but you have enough there that you instantly, like when I read it, instantly picked up, like, even if I didn't know you were from Barbados, I'm like, okay, this character's from the islands. I may not get the island correct, but I know that they're from there. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, man, when we read, especially like this may be controversial, but like some of these Black Indies, it's like, bruh, I don't want this one thing to beat me over the head, and that's one of the things. That's why I've always championed your book, because it's like it doesn't hide that it's Black, but it's not beating you over the head with it. You know what I mean? And I like stories like that. Like as I've said in our admin chats, like whether it's the Caribbean or Blackness, it didn't have to enter the room before I did. When you see me, you're going to know. I'm not hiding it, so I don't need it to enter the room before I do and introduce me. You know what I mean? And that's something I think it's hard for people to understand. They may not like that point of view because they believe you got to kick in the door like, hey, nigga, I'm here and I'm Black and I'm proud. And I'm like, no, sometimes subtlety goes a long way. Like you can show people sometimes better than you can tell them. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to tell you that, but you can see it. You'll see it in how I walk. You'll see it in how I dress. And that's what I liked about your character. She never stops the story and says, hey, all you motherfuckers, I'm from the island. No, it's there how she speaks. It's a natural part of her, and then there's some instances where you can make that those cultural relevancies like a character in and of itself. And there's a way that you implement those things, but that's not what your story did. And I've always appreciated that. Not only did you do a good job to me, and this isn't the word escapes me. Where's Obasi when I need him for these words like that? Each character is distinct. You got I'm assuming you got a Polynesian brother in there, one of the Uso-like brothers, the proxy for the Polynesian people. I liked how he sounded uniquely Polynesian. All the characters had a unique voice, distinct personalities. that was something that I appreciated in the story. And later on,
So
I don't know how much longer you want to go, or if you want, we could do it
no,
in
no,
the
I can
next
talk about
video.
it.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
so that was something that was very important for me, even from book one. So Shani was a standout character. She spoke different, but I wanted every character to kind of sound a little different, so that when you read, or if there's any balloon that you read and you were a little confused, you would know, well, from the person's speech patterns, what they said, this has to be this character that said it. The second book, which is the one with the larger cast, it was very important to have characters sound different, not only personality wise. You had to create different motives for them, so that each character kind of, you would then feel the tension of, this character is going to betray the crew, or this character is going to be loyal. Uh, for things like the guy with the Polynesian background, and there's a girl from East Asia. What I would do is I would just do the best of research I can. I would read about the culture, read about their sayings, read about language, see how much of it I could put into it without it sounding gimmicky.
Forced and
Trying
yeah,
to trying to do that,
and that
especially
was
when you're
so.
dealing
Go
with
ahead.
something that you're not familiar with. So I would
Yeah.
look at it. And then what I've been blessed with, and I was very fortunate, if I see a creator, so there's a in that same book, there's a hacker called Spider. So even though I'm from England, I'm so far removed from English culture in terms of speech. I have family there, but I wanted someone who
Mhm.
was a writer, who wrote. So I just saw a guy, he was an indie creator. I reached out to him and I said, I want this character to say these lines here. And what I want you to do is give me them in 3 levels of, let's say, dialect. One would be, let's say, level one, which would be mild. The other one would be slightly more infused with as much dialect. And then the third would be like over the top. And I just sent him the script with those pieces done. And he then turned around and he rewrote that side for me. So he rewrote all of the language for that character, but he gave me
Mhm.
the three. And then I would pick and choose which one kind of flowed. And then what it ended up doing was, because the book was so large, it meant that if I had to add other dialogue, because I had studied the way how he wrote the dialogue, I was able to write the dialogue now without going back. So you can't tell where he kind of helped me and where I then turned around and went forward with it, because I kind of picked up, okay, this is how you think and this is how you use this word and stuff like that. And the last book I worked on, there's a character from the Philippines, and I was fortunate enough to meet a indie creator who was also from the Philippines. I sent him the script, and he just kind of said, "Okay, this is cool. We don't use these words. This word means this. This is not that." And I was like, "Thanks." Made the changes. So the beauty of it is, if you do the research, if you could find people. Shani was supposed to be the main character that's in book one. She was supposed to have a more Haitian influence, but the creator that I reached out to, she was busy and she didn't have time to kind of help. So I had to kind of pivot, because I wanted to do her to have a little bit of voodoo influence. But the real things are, I didn't want to do it half-ass. So I was like, if I can't research it and I can't get someone to kind of smooth it out to make sure that I'm not messing it up, it's best that let me just pivot. So the character who was originally supposed to be Haitian, she then became a more mixed Caribbean. So her character now has this, she's part Haitian, part Jamaican, part Barbadian, so that I could kind of infuse all the cultures, and there's a bigger well to pull from.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It reminds me, I had looked many years ago about novelists and like how long it takes them to make a novel, and like the really good ones can usually do like two a year, but the amount of weeks, months spent on research so that they know what they're talking about, and like you said, so the characters sound authentic. Like you're talking about in a 6 month working period, they probably spend roughly 3 months of that just doing research on different things. Uh, Jeff Johns, when he did Green Lantern, I think his Green Lantern series
Mhm.
in like '06, I remember reading in Wizard magazine, or maybe it was Newsarama, how he got to go to an Air Force base and he got to be a part of a flight debriefing for some airmen, and he actually got to go up in the jet and whatnot. And that translates to the page when Hal Jordan, I cannot remember who he takes, but he's basically saying like, yeah, I could use the ring and we could fly. He said, but it's different being in this plane and doing it. It's a different experience, and it just made me think about things like that. I mean, you look at Sinners; they had a hoodoo expert on that. Who is it? Not Russell Crowe. It's I can see his face, but he was in the movie Rust, and how they had a gun expert, which actually a lot of these films they do have actual weapons experts there to make sure that you're doing things right. And so these are these things that people don't see. There's a lot
Mhm.
of moving parts when you see that cast list at the end, and just all that behind the scenes stuff. You know just the effort that people put in to make sure that they get it right. Now sometimes, oh Lord, and sometimes people can nitpick to high hell. People, I'll give you a case in point. There are people that uh stargazers, they complained about the movie Titanic, about
Yeah,
how like, oh, that star pattern, did y'all see it there? That's not correct for that day because star patterns are very unique. So I
yeah,
mean, I think I say all that to say there are people that read something to understand how authentic it can be,
mm,
or at least how relatable something is, But then there's also a bad side to that, and you have to be able to strike a balance with that.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
let's see. I don't know how much longer you want to go, but do you want to get into Diary of Stray Dogs?
Sure, sure, sure.
All right, let's try this. Let's see. Oh, no, I got to get back to the stage. Oh, there we go. All
Yeah.
right, this is Diary of Stray Dogs, number one, The Wounded. So, I'll just let you guide it through. Like, if there's a certain page you want to go to, let me know. I like this
Okay.
color. I like the cover. For some reason, these colors. I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor. Um, Honestly, I don't know what view you all, the viewer, sees, but I see the studio view. I'm actually going
No,
to switch it to.
we can't see
I'm
the cursor.
You can't see it. Okay.
I can't see the
Well, either
cursor.
way. Oh, you can.
Mm. No, I
Oh,
can't,
okay.
can't.
Can't. Okay. Well, my cursor is focused on the bottom right corner. Um, just I don't know what it is with me. These types of colors, these things always just really work well for me.
Mm.
Let's go to the next one. Once again, same colors. Let's see. Keep going. I don't like this cover as much as I like the other two, but I think the colors are what really
Mm.
draw me to the other two.
Yeah.
Um,
So the first two covers are the original covers, and yeah, so that's it. So one of the hardest things for me is coming up with a cover concept. So I kind of came up with this one a little bit based off of there's a Batgirl cover where Batgirl is like standing on a corner or something like that, and or Joker or somebody's coming around the corner. So it's a Batgirl cover that I kind of used as inspiration for this one. And the other
I think I might
one,
know what you're talking about. Let me
yeah.
go to it.
So the other cover, right? So the other cover now, this one came to me in terms of this character influencing you to partake, and she's offering the reader drugs, but she's also kind of offering you to partake in the book. So this was inspired by a scene within the story, within the club. And this one was kind of the one I kind of preferred over the two. And this again was like the first time I did a cover with this artist. And covers are a bit hit and miss. So that's the first two. Originally, this book was supposed to be 24 pages. So the original script was 24 pages because the original artist, he didn't want to do a long book. So if you go to the beginning of the book, so,
you want to start here or
no, go for it again. Right. So this is the opening where it introduces the character. This is kind of world building. So this introduces the world. So from what you're seeing here, you're kind of seeing as the future flying stuff. It has a military influence. And if you turn the page, if you just probably go forward like the next two pages, I'm introducing main character here. This page was originally page 1 because the story actually was going to start here. So when I had the opportunity to go back in and add some more pages, I felt as though I should, instead of starting it so cold, give a little bit of the two characters' work relationship, kind of give you a window into what they do. They work as world building. There's also, if you go back to the other page a minute, the first page.
Actually, let me go back to the let me go back to the beginning real quick because there's something I want to point out because I don't want nobody coming to us saying some shit. Oh, damn it. Give me a second. I'm still learning this.
No problem.
I want you guys can't see the cursor, but please pay attention to the upper left-hand corner of the cover, mature content. You're going to see that in this. Your ass better be grown. 18 plus. If you're over 18 plus and you're offended, there's nothing I can do to help you. So it is what it is. But we're not hiding it from you. And I'm not going to go back in and digitize anything, even though I probably could. Which page you want me to go to, man?
Yeah, you can start it. So this page, I'm thinking.
I wish you guys could see my cursor and I could point to it.
Yeah. So this page, I don't think we was able to do it, but this is them. They kind of delivered. Delivered. What was it? Escorted.
Well, tell us who the characters are that we see.
Yeah. So the characters we see is in the top panel. That's the main character. That's Shani. She's the main character, and then in panel 2, the guy with the helmet on the panel 2 to the right. He's the other main character, and two of them are in a relationship, and they're kind of work together. So there's a subtle part that I wasn't able to. We didn't kind of pull it off in the artwork, but the little girl, I think it's on page 1, but the little girl has a doll, and the doll was supposed to be kind of significant. It was supposed to be like a Red Riding Hood doll, and it was to kind of clue you into the story of what was going on, because the story is a little bit of right. So the girl has a doll. She has a doll there. So she has a little doll, and the doll was supposed to be. But again, sometimes what happens is you put something in the script, and it doesn't quite translate into your art. So you go forward with the story. I'll kind of explain.
Yeah. Just tell me when to stop.
Yeah, you can go forward. So we do the club scene, and right, and this is basically what we would call the inciting incident. So this was all kind of planned. This was all in the original draft. And when you write a book and it's kind of short, it's kind of hard to kind of flush out every character. So you have to kind of decide which you're going to do and what you're going to do and that kind of stuff. But you still have to kind of keep the story going, because not everyone you could kind of give their backstory. Sometimes you can get to go back, but some characters just need to be there for canon fodder or to push the story along.
Yeah. What's it? Now this is I'm assuming like a universal currency, just like kind of like Blade Runner or whatever, any cyberpunk-esque story, because that is one of the things that you see in Diary of Stray Dogs, is that it does have a cyberpunk aesthetic, highlights, low life, for anybody that doesn't really understand cyberpunk, not just the game, but cyberpunk, was it 2077, Blade Runner, if you're into anime. Yeah, if you're into anime, Bubblegum, Crisis, Crash, Akira, that's all cyberpunk. Highlights, low life is the simplest way to explain it. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. So I'm assuming like universal currency, kind of like that. You want to go forward, or let me know when to stop. This is that character that you say is that throwaway character, or almost like a minor catalyst character or something of that nature.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is she is. I've had people who have analyzed the book. Everybody kind of sees it different. So I've had people who kind of saw her as a protagonist, and in a way, or it's her story. So this is Rosa, and she's kind of a happy-go-lucky, anything goes bike a chick. And as you said, the story kind of, she kind of sets the story going. I took a lot of influence from things like Quentin Tarantino's movies. I kind of like that kind of stories that have that kind of chaos and that kind of like
very organized chaos.
So this thing causes this to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Pulp Fiction, great. I remember watching Pulp Fiction as a kid, and I was always one of those kids, highly smart. So, I was always able to watch like certain things like Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, and get the jokes that they were talking about. But yeah, Pulp Fiction, crazy. Actually, Jackie Brown is actually my favorite Tarantino movie. But one thing with Tarantino films is every character is unique in their own way. And like you said, somehow they all tie into each other, even if it's just for a little bit. They serve a purpose to a degree.
Yeah. So I have people who they love this character. This is their favorite character.
I thought she was the lead when I read it.
Yeah. She does, because she is the kind of catalyst to the story. So you can kind of go forward again. And that's why I like to do a story where different people can interpret different things. I've had people sit and show me stuff in the book that I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of it this way, or I forgot about. And then I try to sneak Easter eggs into the stories too. So if you see there on the wall, there's a pink like sign that says COTF, and that's another book. That's another book. So I kind of sneak in certain things like all Easter eggs and stuff with that. Could go forward.
To your point about sometimes people who are on the outside looking in can see things that sometimes the people on the inside can't. I remember like the first Transformers movie, and I believe it was one of those like audience Q&A things, and they asked like the writers or whatever, like, how did Bumblebee's voice box get healed at the end? And they were like, and the writers, you could tell they had like kind of thought about it. They came with some like convoluted answer, and the fans were like, oh, we just thought that when he touched the little matrix thing, it fixed it. And they were like, oh yeah, we'll just go with that one. That's much easier. We'll go with that. That's even better, because we didn't think about that shit. Also
Yeah.
to that cyberpunk aesthetic. Once again, like the use of color and look. Man, I wish I could see the cursor. You'd see what I'm pointing at. But look at the top third of the book. You see those highlights, and then you see the bottom low life. They're going to a club.
Yeah.
All right, let's
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Just how
So
far you want to go.
yeah, so that's the club. We could kind of go. I think this, yeah, the next page. So this is the technology. She has like a robotic eye, and like cell phones, where cell phones kind of destroy story. Ever realize that in a movie, for a story to work, the protagonist has to lose their phone, or the phone has to kind of die, because a phone could end the movie
Unless it's a
in
Disney
no.
film, unless it's a Disney film, then you don't lose a phone, you lose a parent. Very
Yeah.
you think I'm
So
bullshitting. This
no,
that's an
no, no.
actual thing. That's actually
Yeah, you
that's,
do.
I think there's only like one or two Disney films where the character has both of their parents, but you're gonna lose one of the two or both. You don't get to have it all.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
So
but
I
you
kind
are
of,
right about that. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
yeah. So her robotic eye in the story was something that could have make and break the story. So when we kind of introduce it, we realize that it's on the fritz. So she has an error, and it's to kind of mirror technology today, where you have stuff and it has to get a new firmware update, and it's useless until it gets the firmware update, that kind of stuff. I guess you could kind of skip along to there's a scene there where the torturing, or turn the next page. I think we introduced how
Before I
the
do that,
characters
and
kind of.
I wanted to expound on that point about how technology could. There's a lot of films where technology, if you really looked at what it's capable of, the movie would be over. It's the Will Smith movie. My sister just watched it not too long ago. I can see it, but I can't think of the title. And that's a film where, like, if they had used technology properly, which they literally do, but if they had used it, uh, the movie would have been over, because you would have clearly been able to see that Will Smith's character had no idea what the hell was going on, and you went after him anyway. Uh, I know it's going to come to me. Let me get to the page, and I'm going to look it up so I can tell people.
Right. So that's
Which
So
page?
this isn't. No, this is another page of the kind of meat kind of thing. We could probably jump ahead to. Let me see. There's a torture scene, I guess. You can kind of jump along to the middle of the book, or any page.
Give me what's yeah. Just tell me when to stop.
Yeah. So this was another page. I kind of like. This page was one that kind of came to me. So this part with the character pulling the eye out of his head, that was something that I seldom will draw out something for the artist. I think I drew it out, or I kind of just described it in full detail of how I wanted it done, and this was exactly what I wanted, where the character just kind of pulled the eye out, and we're introduced to the main villain here with the red eyes. This kind of ominous character. The concepts I kind of showed the artist were a lot less sinister. He was just a guy with a mask, and but he wanted to do something more. He wanted to make him a bit different, and I said, "Well, just show me what you've got." And the way how I kind of work with a team is, if I don't have a problem with it, and it's okay, even if it's not my vision or what I came up with, I will go with it. And
yeah, you give some room for leeway. You want, once again, going back to that collaborative effort, that cohesion and things like that, and based off of kind of what you want, that artist may be like, you know what, this may look better from a visual perspective. So that's definitely understandable.
So even like the guy who's doing the torturing, he's the person who would have come up with that design, and he would do stuff where he'd make a character like this, and then I would be like, I would like to use it in another project, or he made him so interesting, or he looked so interesting, where I just had, I just have a guy torturing him, and I didn't, but he's the person who decided, well, what if I made him a guy with tattoos all over his head? And he's the person who came up with that concept. You know what I mean? So, as you said, if you have a good team, they will add to the project.
Yeah, you want their you want their feedback. I mean, especially because you have to take into consideration the knowledge that your creative team has. There was something else, but I really am trying to find this Will Smith movie because that shit's gonna bug me if I don't find it. Where do you want me to go now, man?
Well, that's the one that he was a clone. That's what you mean?
No. The one where if they had, because it was to your point about like how a cell phone can end a movie, but it was like because my sister she just watched this movie, came out like 1999. Okay, that's why I can't find it because it's got him as the producer. But when I was looking at it through these fresh eyes, like I never noticed it when I watched the film, but when I initially watched it, but when I went back, I'm like, this movie makes no sense. They clearly had the technology, they did use it. If they had just used their damn brains, you would realize he doesn't know what the hell is going on. It's one of those like they clearly show the thing that they're searching for being snuck into his bag. And then
I know what you mean. The one with him and Gene Hackman. The one with him and Gene Hackman.
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, Enemy of the State. That's it. Enemy of the State. For anybody who is listening to us, like for what Alan is talking about, like sometimes like not just a phone, but technology could ruin a movie, which is why sometimes they disable it. That is a movie where if you go back and watch it, the people that go after Will Smith clearly know he has no idea what the hell is going on. The only connection that ties him is that the guy that bumps into him, they like went to law school together, but they have clear footage. Had they had just used a high school level education, which they all clearly do possess, they would have known he doesn't know what he's talking about. If you were able to find out all this stuff about him, you were able to sneak into his house and they faked a robbery. They faked a break-in. And okay, so real quick, that's ludicrous in and of itself. You know he doesn't know what's going on. You break into his house and you still can't find the shit that you're looking for. Like that movie makes no sense with fresh eyes. And there's other movies like that. Independence Day is another one. That's why I stopped watching, and it's a great YouTube channel, CinemaSins, because I'm like, if I continue, and I haven't watched his videos in over 10 years, but he does great videos, but there are things that he breaks down, and it's like, oh yeah, no, this movie now makes no sense. Real quick before we move on, to your point about the cell phone, it was through him that I learned that and this is information for everybody, right? In your cell phone bill, you pay in our country, you pay like a 911 surcharge. The reason why you pay that is because even if your phone does not have cellular service, it is always able to call 911. And if they had did that in Saw, if they had a phone, if they had did that in Saw, that movie is like 10 minutes long. All right, let's move on. Yeah, so we're gonna have to do another video on that. But what page you want me to get you, man? We're
right. So this page here, right?
Go ahead, man.
So there's a little bit of like how things go when I wrote the script. Sometimes what would happen is you'd write the script, get the book will be finished, but the pacing and the story would be off. So this page, I had to move it in the actual set of pages up so that the flow and stuff from what happened would kind of feel a little bit more, it would allow for time between pages and for the jumping of scenes. So sometimes that's another part of it, that you have to design a book in a way that if you need to edit it in terms of shifting pages around, because just like when you write a movie or you film a movie and they have to go in and cut it, sometimes with a comment, you have to do the same thing. Sometimes you go in and you realize
Absolutely.
that you have to shift this whole set of pages down, move a scene up so that there's a little bit of breathing room between the two scenes.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
Or
you say,
your
no, so yeah,
or in
so it's things like that.
film, like, because a lot of times, in the editing room, there's things that get caught into scenes, and you wonder, like, it's not a movie that I watched, but it's a video that I watched of a guy editing a movie. This was several years ago, and he showed how the movie, they were filming a western, but if they had left the scene alone, there's some things that come into the scene. And so he's like, yeah, part of an editor's job is I have to cut away to a scene that is like B and C roll to break this up, so that when we cut back, continuity, that, like you said, that flow is still preserved, and things that may seem a little bit out of place, you don't see because we've covered that up with another scene. So that's totally understandable. I mean, you have to do the same thing with the reviews that we write, especially like me, like
Mm.
in doing my Absolute Green Lantern 1. And actually, let me say, like, with doing Absolute Green Lantern 2 review, which is on the page, anybody wants to read it. That was something that I had to do, because that's part of an editorial job. Is like, I have to figure out how to talk about these things, what to talk about. Like, okay, if I talk about this, that unfairly gives away a surprise in the book. So then you got to go back and
Yeah,
edit sentences, rewrite sentences as to
yeah,
not spoil things. Or it's like, okay, I want to use this picture. How do I make this picture from this book work? And then, there's people underestimate the value of good editorial, whether it's self-editorialization or somebody else doing that.
mhm.
Are you where you want me to go now,
Yeah. So
man?
you could probably go to the there's a room, the when the all the people get killed in the office. So you
Let's
could
just
go
skip
to
past
there.
all the juicy sex stuff.
So yeah,
Which
so
which
this is the
out of okay, and then real quick, I want everybody to know how I came across Diary of Stray Dogs. Oh, and there's a little bit of background information.
Mhm.
So I did some video reviews in BCL. Uh, Alan, or Nigel, was one of the first people to comment on him, right? At this time, for months, I did not know that Alan wrote comics. Hell, I didn't know until this interview right here that he's been writing for 18 years. I know he's been writing, so that was some information I just learned, but I didn't know he wrote it. But I got my first copy of Diary of Stray Dogs with the Epiphany Engine bundle, and I had read several of the books. Some of them had, some interesting concepts, yada yada yada. We won't get into a lot of detail there, but uh, out of the ones that I had read up until a certain point, Diary of Stray Dogs to me felt like the most complete book. It, as I've told you before, full disclosure, it was one of the few books that I felt was shelf ready, where you could put that book in Barnes and Nobles, you could put it in a comic book shop, you could put it on Amazon. Like, it felt the most complete. That's not me. That's not hyperbole. That's not me blowing smoke because we're members of the same group. This is stuff that I told you last year. And
Mhm.
I'm just, and when I said last year, I'm saying publicly. So there's no difference. But that's how I came across Diary of Stray Dogs. There was something else I was going to say with that, but you know, uh, real quick, for anybody wondering, you guys probably don't see it, but this is slide 19. I think there's 28 slides, so we're getting close to the end of the book, I think.
yeah,
Let me
yeah.
check real quick. There
So
is actually 30,
uh
so we're about
but
halfway through. Oh shit, let me go
yeah.
back.
So I wanted the book to be when I kind of wrote this too, the the idea was it was supposed to be 30 pages, complete story. So that was a bit of a challenge because this was the first, well, it wasn't quite the first time, but the first time I was doing a book for myself that I was going to try to limit myself. As indie creators, sometimes we have unlimited, there's no one telling us how big a book should be or what's not. The only thing that kind of limits the size of a book is the cost. But I wanted
And real
to kind
quick,
of control that. Mhm.
and you've been at this, you said 18 years, so that means you started writing back around 06, 07.
Yeah.
So some information for me, like I said, I'm really excited about this interview, and I just really couldn't think about it earlier in the chat. And we've been about an hour and 15 minutes, so maybe we'll finish this one up, and then if you want, we could do another video for Diary of Stray Dogs too.
Sure.
But so as I said, I got back into comics in 2000. About the time you started writing comics, I started having money problems. So, my ability to buy started to go down. I wasn't able to buy for a while. Hell, there was a connection there, but I can't fucking remember. This is what happens when you talk to somebody that you're cool with. So, what else did you want to tell us about this? Because I really did have a point, but I can't fucking remember.
Yeah. So like, I was just saying like, this was the first book I kind of put limitations on. Said I don't want to go over a certain amount. Was it?
Oh no. That's because when I got back into comics, man, I was trying to absorb so much information, just page count, things like that. So one of the things I would love for you to talk about, what is the average page count for a comic book? I believe it's 22 pages of story with no ads, which makes it a 32-page book with the ads. So it's like 10 pages of ads. But then, like you said, you being an independent creator, there's no ads, and so that's you just made me think of that.
Yeah. So I only just learned the other day the significance of having the page count the way how it was. And it was so that the artist could kind of finish a book in a month. So that's how Marvel did it. So that if you're doing
you do a page a day.
Yeah. So if you're doing it ongoing, you shouldn't have an issue of completing it because you have enough pages in the month. So that was a smart thing. So that's how they was able to do it. For independence,
go ahead. I apologize.
No, it's so for independence, we're not governed by those rules. The biggest rule we're kind of governed by is page costs, how much money we have, and how well we've structured the story. So
and going to that a little bit, like, because I it's something, like I said, when I got back into comics in the early 2000s, this was all stuff that I was learning too. And so for anybody wondering, I would like you to I want people to understand, like, one of the biggest things with making a comic is not the cost of print. You can get wholesale printing deals. You can get print on demand. It's page rate. And and like I said, your book being of the quality that it is, like, if you want, how much would this, and people got to understand, like, with you want a splash page, a cover, like, all of those are different things. And so what would a page like what we have on screen run you? What did this run you, if you remember?
Okay, so this was a little back then, but a page like this can easily run you now, depending on the artist. I would say I'm going to give you US prices. I tend to, right? So I'll get US prices. So we're looking at anywhere between 250 to 300 US. That's kind of like average, and that's including like if you're paying for lettering. The low end would be, you could probably get, if you're lucky, you could get maybe 100 for the artist, maybe 50 to color, so you're looking at 150, then the lettering, editing, that kind of stuff. So it can be, I like to say, if someone had to come to me, I try to tell them, don't budget too low, because you're not always going to get low, and don't budget too high, because then you're going to kind of get you're not going to feel as though you could get the book done. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
a lot of it comes down to getting to know the artists. Some artists, especially if they're established, you will have to pay them the rate. There are other artists that will be willing to work with you. Some artists, it's a very, very delicate situation
Yeah, and
because
that's
sometimes you get what
you
you
go
pay
ahead.
for.
Oh,
You get what you
absolutely.
pay for. So if you pay
Collaborative
for a cheap
effort
artist,
and
yeah,
yeah, collaborative effort and team cohesion. If it's somebody that you work with, that you build rapport and chemistry with, they're willing to work with you. It reminds me, you're going to hear me say this a lot because a lot of people have just told me things, and there's things that stick with you. A former associate of mine, when he went to college, he was like, get to know your professors, right? Because you may be late on an assignment, or you may be struggling with something, and they are more willing to help people that talk to them, that know, rather than people that just show up. You know,
yeah.
uh, it's the same like with having Alan on this interview. It's because I've gotten to know him and he feels comfortable, and we're doing this, that he's willing to work with me, and we're talking about his book and whatnot. And so you said this
Mhm.
page here would run you about, you said 350 to 400.
No, about so I said say anywhere from 2 to 350, depending on the
250.
team. That
And
kind of,
is
yeah,
that fully colored, or is that just the pencils?
not colored. I talk about
Color.
finish, completely finished,
Okay.
completely finished.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I
again,
know I've seen.
it could vary. It could vary. It could go up. It could go down. Some people who have, that's why you will find if a team comes about and they're working with the same people, it means that they've kind of worked out a lot of the finance. They've kind of worked out. So I'll give you an example. A page is a page, but I could also design a page that is less effort to draw. So if I do that, it may mean it wouldn't cost as much, or you would get, there's different things you can do. For my artists, what I tend to do is I give them a fee, like we kind of work out a cost for extras, because something that we take for granted, and that's something that when I work on this book, especially if you're working with a book that you're creating a world and stuff, you need to do a lot of prep work. So something that you don't see here is me and the artist. We have a Google Drive with tons of references, from characters to buildings to vehicles to weapons. And we just kind of put stuff in there. And this is almost like our idea vault.
Like
So
it's an asset folder.
yeah. So what we would do, so we know, so and then we watch the same movies. We talk about movies. We talk about films. We talk about where we want to draw stuff from. So for instance, the in screen in the HUD on the girl's motorcycle helmet, clearly that's an influence from Iron Man. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
he would say, hey, like the Iron Man. Different things like the guy having the holographic image of the kids. That would be stuff that we saw in any Star Wars, where they kind of, that's how they kind of communicate with these little holographic things. But we kind of
Yeah, the
say, hey,
holocrons.
yes, we say, hey, let's do something like this, let's do something like that. And those kind of things, we don't think about it, but it costs the artist time. So usually I would also kind of put in a fee for the prep work. When he designs the characters, he does layouts for the characters. I have to pay for all of those if we're doing that kind of stuff. So there's a lot, and it all depends on if the artist and you work in a way where they give back to you, in terms of, some people will go the extra mile, some people will only do what they've contracted to do, nothing more, even down to the fact like they will kind of get antsy if you said, could you change this? You know what I mean? If I had
Mhm.
said in this picture, I noticed you have the guy's arm wrong, could you go back and change it? Some people, it's kind of harder to get them to do it. Other people are a little bit more willing, and it all depends on working together, professionalism, experience, and a whole lot of different things.
Yeah. And then
we
taking
could
into consideration probably like what they have on their plate, obviously with something like this, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Like if there's what you're paying me, and then there's what, let's say, Marvel and DC pay, and so it's like certain projects, just common sense, just take a priority. I mean, it's the same thing like comic to film, like when Josh Whedon was doing Astonishing X-Men, it was like, okay, this is, and we understood back then, it was like, this is a comic book. This is not going to pay him anywhere near as much as doing a TV show or a future film is going to pay. Good Lord, how heavy is it raining? Sorry, I live in a part of the state where it rains a lot, and it's, you guys probably can't hear it, but I can hear it. So it sounds like it's coming down. But, we understood like the delays with Astonishing X-Men was like, he working on TV, that pays more, that takes priority. And so we definitely see that in comics. We'll have to talk about that in another episode. But all right, I'm gonna move ahead. Like I said, we're about halfway in this book. You guys can't see it. Yeah. It tells me slide 19 and we out of 38. So all right.
Yeah.
Let me know when to stop.
Fast forward. You could go forward. Let's go forward. So this is, you see, it's a kind of a very action heavy book with some emotional beats. So
you see that more so in the second one, Dire Stray Dogs 2. The emotional toll things take.
Yeah.
Just let me know when to stop, man.
Yeah. So this scene here, this was, I used to watch a lot of films. Did you ever see there's a picture with Ryan Reynolds and the guy from Goodfellas, Ray Liotta. Is it Smoking Aces? I think it's Smoking Aces.
Oh, Smoking Aces. What was that? Ryan Reynolds in that? That was. I like I like that movie. That was a good movie. Had Alicia Keys, Taraji P. Henson. I like movies like that, and that's one of those ensemble cast films. That
was good.
Dire Stray Dogs is kind of like that. Like every character is unique in Smoking Aces. Another movie that's similar to that is Flypaper, Get Shorty, and it's follow up.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Jackie Brown. Oh my goodness, Guy Ritchie film. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Smoking Barrels.
A lot of Guy Ritchie films are like that, and those are fun, and those can be a bit challenging to pull off because you have to give each character a unique voice. And when I saw this page, I thought about what was it? Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. No, Snatch, where it had the scene with the guy from Law and Order. And it was every time he was coming to England, it was always him on the plane, a drink, and something else. That quick little montage, and that's kind of what this reminds me of.
Yeah. So this was kind of influenced a little bit by Smoking Aces with the shootout in the elevator, or any film with a chaotic shootout in a close quarters situation. And go back a minute for the other one, right? So the main
right here, or do you want the
elevator again? The other one, that one, yeah. So this one was a kind of almost like a Western drawdown because I'm influenced by Westerns. So I kind of like that kind of tension of quick two characters see one another, the eyes, the reveal of her tech coming back on. So tech comes back on just in time to save her life. She sees the case, everything comes together, and then there's a shootout. And it's kind of left hanging.
My grandpa.
Yeah, so it's kind of left hanging to who survived. But then the next page reveals that she survived and the other guy got shot. And then she kills him and stuff. So
as you say, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. As you say, that does kind of, I don't know, as you said, you were influenced by Westerns. I started thinking about like Lee Van Cleef Westerns. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Sabata, or obviously The Good, the Bad, the Ugly trilogy.
Yep.
I forget what it's the trilogy is actually called, but it's a fistful of
It's called
dollars, a few dollars more,
right, and the good, the bad,
and then it ends with the good, the
the-
bad, and the ugly. Lee Van Cleef
yeah,
being in all three of those also. But
yeah,
I see what you're kind of saying there. This would
yeah, yeah.
this would
So
be whoever was going to kill. This is clearly the Clint Eastwood character. You can't see the cursor, but was it Shawnee? Shawnee is like the Clint
yeah,
Eastwood
yeah,
character. Okay, yeah, the quick draws. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. We'll go ahead and move forward a bit. Just to let me know where to stop.
Right.
See,
So
and
then it comes to the end, and it has that kind of. Have you ever watched? I like. You ever watch a picture called "No Country for Old Men"?
oh, a Coen Brothers film.
Yeah,
Okay, for anybody that
yeah,
doesn't know, the Coen brothers are very talented writers and directors. They don't do a lot of interviews. They do not do a lot of talking, but you can tell they put a lot of effort into their films. No Country for Old Men is a Coen brothers film. So is Fargo. So is The Big
True
Lebowski.
Grit.
Like True Grit, which they
Yeah,
remade. That was
remade.
a John Wayne western. They've won a lot of Oscars, but they put a lot of work into their stuff. But boy,
Yeah.
if you ever hear them
So
actually speak, they awkward. You think they got a little something wrong with them.
so
But
so a
I
lot
haven't seen it, but I've
of
seen some of the scenes from it.
right. So Coen Brothers, they have stuff where characters die off screen, so you don't get to see them die. And there's something about a character that you like getting an unceremonial ending that kind of disturbs you. So that's kind of what happens here, where the character that we were following, the biker, she's killed technically kind of off screen because we don't see how she dies, but that's how and then we see the case that was the crux of the whole thing, and I kind of purposely made the case a MacGuffin, similar to um the one with he was talking
Pulp
about it all,
Fiction.
Pulp
Pulp
Fiction,
Fiction.
where we
You
don't know.
never
Yeah, so we don't know
you
what's
never find
we don't know.
the
Right,
briefcase is important, but you never find out what's in it.
right.
And,
So that's the
and
same
that's
thing I
something
kind of
that
did.
people, yeah, and sometimes people have to understand with storytelling. Certain things are just a vehicle to link. They are a thread it is a threaded needle. You don't need to know what's in it. I remember Soul came out. Unfortunately, it came out during COVID, but a lot of people were like, "I want to know where the little soul ends up, and do they meet up again?" And it's like you don't get to know that. You have to just be happy knowing that character's progression. They're finally graduating to what they need to be doing, and that's
Yeah,
it. Sometimes that's all you get.
yep,
That's
yep,
that's all you get. You know.
yeah.
But now that you say that, see, this is why I wanted to talk about that, because there's those insights that there were some things that I picked up, but I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's kind of like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to
So,
think of
so,
another movie that had a similar thing like that.
uh, Indiana Jones tends to have a lot of MacGuffins. So the Ark of the Covenant was basically a MacGuffin. We never kind of saw what was in it. We just knew that it was either the Word of God or the Spirit of God or whatever. Um,
Yeah, but you knew that But here's the difference: is that with that, you knew
hmm,
early on you were never supposed to open it. The Ark of the
yeah,
Covenant was just the
true.
literal object itself. But no, yeah, I see what you're saying, because you don't know specifically what's in there.
Yeah,
Just that you're
but
not
not
supposed
only
to open.
that.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's a MacGuffin is just anything that the central plot is surrounded by. There's a movie called For Your Eyes Only that had it in, and I think that was the first James Bond movie I ever watched, where they're chasing this kind of code breaking box or something, and in the end they just kind of throw it off a mountain and nobody gets it. And I remember that I always
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore, yeah, For Your
Yeah,
Eyes Only, and that was and that kind of really kind of stuck with me. So when the story is short, you have to kind of make it as compact as possible. You have to you can't flush out everything. So this one, I had to do certain things. There's also another thing that was kind of underlined in here, and I wanted to do it, was the story is also a retelling of Red Riding Hood. So the character's name is Rosa. She's red. She wears a hoodie. She rides a bike, and she was supposed to deliver a package. And the villain is the big bad wolf. But the difference is,
and you can, and you once again, you guys can't see my cursor, but I can kind of see that when you look at like the design of the mask.
Yes,
I can kind of see that correlation right there. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of little things I try to put in because it makes it fun. There's a lot of things like certain background characters talking that sometimes you don't have to put them in, but if you can do it, it helps the world to come alive. So like the maitre d' woman talking there's some other people talking to the characters when they're coming. I try to make the background characters also stand out. So you will have them talking and saying little things, and usually it'll be something that's comical, throwaway, but it helps with the world building.
Like Grand Theft Auto. When you walk past characters, they'll be like, "Bitch, better have my money." But I'll give you a comic book example. Chris Claremont. I have a story about this convention. As far as I know, I'm the only guy that went to a convention to spend money that ended up getting a job at the convention. But that's another story. It wasn't like it wasn't life-changing money, but it was interesting. But what I liked about Claremont, and part of the reason why I'm doing this type of interview with you is because I watched how Claremont interacted with the people as he was signing things. So one of my favorite comics of all time is Avengers Annual 10. For those of you that don't know, that's the first appearance of Rogue. Everything first appearance there, cover, whatever. That book, I always liked it because everything that happens on the cover happens in the book. But one of the cool things was because you were talking about like background stuff that people don't pay attention to. Claremont, just like the master of the craft that he is, he didn't even have to flip through the book. He just grabbed it, opened it automatically right to the page that it needed to be on. And he said, "What do you see in this scene right here?" And it's the top third of the page. And he's like, "Look at this conversation, but then look at the background. They're having this conversation just as calm and collective as you could be. And Spider-Woman's just sitting on the wall right there because it was the scene they're in the hospital. She's literally the fly on the wall, and nobody's making a fuss about this." I remember somebody had brought him an Iron Fist book, and he opens it automatically to where it needs to be. He said, "Okay, guys, look around here." He said, "What do you see?" And we're all looking, we're like, we don't know what we're supposed to see. So without saying, he said, "How many appendages do you have?" And we look, and he points to it. He's like, "How many appendages are you supposed to have?" And the guy has 3 legs. The artist drew with 3 legs. And it's stuff like that, that it just these little things that a writer like yourself would notice, or a very detail-oriented fan. For those of y'all that don't know, we mentioned the Transformers. I recommend some of you go back and look at season 2. You're going to see things like there's an episode where Optimus Prime is missing an arm, but he has that same arm with that exact same arm that he's missing shooting at him. It's a whole thing. Y'all can look that up. But just, I don't know, you saying it just reminded me of those things. And that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Like I didn't get that correlation. Like she is a Little Red Riding Hood. She dies, whereas in the story, she's eating, and then somebody has to come in and cut the wolf's stomach open. That's a whole nother conversation, y'all. Don't let Disney fool you.
Yeah, so I'm a big fairy tales fan, and the original fairy tale. So, and they were really dark. So that's why I'm also kind of influenced by that. So,
and that's why I was saying, y'all, don't let Disney fool you. Disney rewrote a lot of those stories. Even the Jungle Book, which by Rudyard Kipling, that is not how that story goes.
No, that's dark.
And that was just as a side note for you all, that was actually the last film that Walt Disney worked on in 1966. And the dance scene in that is the exact, with all the animals, that's the exact same dance scene in Robin Hood that came out in like 72. Exact scene verbatim.
Just
want to throw those little bits of information out there for y'all. Y'all might find that fun. All right. So where do you want me to go now, man? I'm
So I
excited.
think this is basically, yeah. So this is basically the end of it. It goes to now to the right. So it's the final page, and this kind of, although it ends, it kind of is a precursor to book two. The
Mhm.
subtle things that we decided to do. So her hair is longer here, so that's to kind of give you the idea that time passed between the last scene and this scene. So her hair is
Mhm.
noticeably longer at the top, and she basically travels back to the Caribbean. So the book started with her questioning if she wanted to go back, but because everything that happened to her and losing everything, she ends up going back. So it kind of works as a full circle. And it was very important for me to do a book that had a beginning, middle, end. So I had to make sure the story beats were there. It has to have a part where there's a point of no return. So when her partner is killed, that's the turning point. She has to make that decision. Does she go forward? Does she, and that's how the story goes on like that. So it was very interesting. And then it made me think going forward, I would like to do more books like this. Uh, and then because we could probably do a video about book two, and I can
Yeah,
tell you some of the
because
behind the scenes stuff.
oh, absolutely, because we're already at like an hour and 40 for this, but this has been fun.
Yeah, yeah.
I've enjoyed this, and like I said, you did exactly what I was hoping, because there are some things that you've pointed. It's been a while since I read it, because I read this last year, but as I go
Mhm.
through it, and I hope to do this with other creatives, um, some of those behind the scene things, those nuances, from our group chats, where I always talk about like those nuances that people don't pick up on. You know,
Yeah.
one thing that you did well, like as you described that scene, the there's the passage of time. I learned there's this white woman. She's in BCL also, but she owns a comic book shop in Houston. Space Cadets,
Mhm.
probably
Mhm.
the best shop that I went to. I stayed on the western side of Houston. And Houston is as big as, geographically, Houston is as big as New York, right? We're talking about
Mhm.
just by geography. It's as big as New York. Not population wise, but it's as big as New York. And she had probably the best shop that I went to. And I went to several shops when I was on vacation last year. I was talking with y'all, and I went to her shop, and it was actually about 5 minutes or so, about a 2 or 3 minute drive from my hotel. But she taught me a phrase, and she's been in the comic book business for a very long time. I mean, going back to like the 80s and 90s. She taught me a phrase that, what you said about this last page, it reminded me. Don't say what the art can show. That is
Yeah.
something that I think people uh, need to understand, is that, especially with some books, Alan, that me, you, Imani, and Abasi have gone through and we've read and we've discussed, is that there are some books where they'll say things like, this craft landed. Well, if that's not important, you don't need to say that. We can clearly see it. Comics are a visual medium. We don't need to
Mhm.
say that. Now, I've mentioned Claremont quite often. Obviously, as an X-Men fan, I have to, but I can also be honest. And this is just a thing for its time. If you go back and you read Claremont's run, especially when he was with John Byrne, like there's uh the quickest issue I could tell you guys to explain it is, I think, issue 145. This is the issue with Doom holding Storm. And I believe there's a scene in there where Claremont basically says that, with something along the lines of like, and I'm being very gesticulate, that's talking with your hands. Um, with the whisk of the movement of her hands, the wind, something along the lines of, it's, she summons it up and takes flight, like treating comics that is a visual medium as a prose novel. And so
Mhm.
that's why I bring that up. Like, and that's something that you did well in this story, is that you never say what the art can show. And
Yeah.
this page is a good example. Like, you have said this sometime past, yeah, but it's not necessary. You left that up to the artist. You trusted the artist to show that. And so that just got me thinking about that. But yeah, man, we're running at
Yeah.
about an hour and 45 right now. This has been fun. We'll talk more after the video ends, but let me see what other pages we got left here. So we got this book 2.
All right. So those are the other. If you go back one, right.
Right here.
So yeah, so these were the other books that I was doing in the same universe, Indigo Child and The Tragedy of Ruby Pixel. So those were the other books set in the same universe.
What type
Right
of stories
now, same cyberpunk, same characters, same universe. We'll see characters lapping over. I'm actually rewriting the top book right now. I may redo it. Sometimes if I write a script and I don't like it and it's not coming together, I just kind of abandon it. Versus kind of putting it into production and then you don't like it or it doesn't work out. For those who have reached the end of this video, if you right now you could get the same book we just kind of went through for free. Just reach out to me. You could DM me and say, hey, hit me up with I want to read the Wounded One free copy. It's free on if you got the Epiphany Engine bundle, it's free. If you hit, but again, if anybody wants to read it, just hit me up. You get it for free. It's not a problem. Yeah.
All righty. You already started on the part that I was about to get to close this out. Upcoming projects. I know you just told people where they could get Diary of Stray Dogs, the Wounded number issue 1 for free. But what projects do you have coming up? Do you want people to know? And don't forget, as I get better, I'll be able to put up people's socials and whatnot. But let them know where they can reach you at. I know you're on Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't really do much there.
Yeah, so you can check me on Blue Sky, Nigel Verse, on Instagram, Nigel Verse. You can get my books from Comix.usa. I think it's whitezinker.usa. And we just finished a Kickstarter. So I have a new book that's, I think I actually went out to the backers. So it went out to the backers, Neon Ghosts, set in the same universe. And the next book I am doing would be a sequel to a book I did, I believe is last year, Critical Ops Task Force.
Yeah.
So I
did tell you that I would. So I have the distinction of being his first sale for Diary of Stray Dogs 2.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let me see. There we go. Diary of Stray Dogs 2. You guys can't, because I ain't even took it out the package because Alan hooked me up with the digital. That ain't for y'all. Y'all don't get that exclusive. There's another cover that he has for that's really dope, but I wanted to support my dude here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Like I said, your story, like I said, for everybody, I got it in the Epiphany Engine bundle. I had read several books, just took them for what they were, not knowing when they were released or whatever, not holding that against them, but just the stories as they were. And out of that bundle, and I still have some books in there to read, and me and Alan, we had discussed, I never did finish telling the whole part. We had been talking about a few, and it was in that discussion that I found out that he wrote Diary of Stray Dogs because I had said something along the lines of like, Diary of Stray Dogs felt like the most complete book or whatever, and you were really proud of that. And then you let me know that you were the writer of that. And so
that's the best way to get in. The best way to get an honest opinion. If not, you would kind of be like, yeah, I kind of, So I was like, if you like it, you like it. You would tell me. So that's how it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something like with with the reviews that we do, people got to understand. You make a product for public consumption. We understand the passion and effort, but even this video was made with passion and effort. I mean, it ain't free, you know. At some point, I got to pay for StreamYard, you know. But people can have their likes and dislikes about this video, our mannerisms, the resolution, all that stuff.
The
It's for
audio.
public consumption.
Yeah.
Audio comes through crisp. The audio is really going to be more determined by your internet connection, because of lag and things like that. But I mean, for the most part, on StreamYard's part, it's going to come through pretty good. At least it has for me. But people are going to be able to have an opinion. What you want is for people to have an opinion and be able to articulate that opinion. And I think that's what sets us aside, is that if we read a story, we're not just going to be like, oh man, this shit sucks, yada, yada, yada. Like, no, we want to be able to tell you what was good, what was bad about it. With this group, there are 4 admins. We all have a different style in how we do reviews, how we see comics. Alan will tell you, we do not always all agree. There are some books we have read, we won't tell y'all which ones, where we're just like, okay, this book is functional. There's others where we're like, this book is bad. Once again, that's we're not going to tell you which ones, but it's like, we'll tell you what we liked and what we disliked about it. You know, just being fair. That's all it is. And it's just, you know, I've enjoyed this conversation to be able to talk about those nuanced things, to be able to talk about what was done right, you know, maybe what you liked and didn't like, but just being able to have honest dialogue, which I think sometimes is a little bit hard for some indie creators, not all, but some, to have, because you put so much effort into it. You know, you, as I say in our chat, you know, people want the circumstance of creation to outweigh the final product, and that's usually not how it works. Or, you know, they want reviews from qualified people, but what's a qualified person? You know, Yelp exists for a reason. Every travel site has a review section, because you want to hear from the people that actually stayed in that place, ate at that restaurant. You know, you want to hear from those people. You just hope that they can articulate their point and not just come off sounding like a hater. But you can't perceive every review, every, you know, every dialogue about your product to as like negative or whatever. I don't want to drag on too long, but not Al, I'm gonna call you Alan. It's hard for me to call you Nigel because I want to say it in like a fake British accent. I'll be like, Nigel, I'm here with Nigel Lynch. Yeah, you know, but there were some things that I wanted to talk about, but we'll do next time. I think I have a title. I'll tell you about it when we end. But in part 2, we'll talk about Diary of Stray Dogs 2. Maybe if you have any pages from any works that you have coming up, we could show that. But talk about how you got linked up with Wiseacre Comics and what that has meant for your career and whatnot. So
yeah,
with that being said, everybody, we're gonna end this one. I mean, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hope to have more, you know, conversations like that. If you saw me smiling throughout the interview, that's because we were at parts where I was really super excited. And, you know, like I said, I'm a fan, and you need fans. You need fans to want to discuss your book out of want and not obligation. And trust me, that's a topic for another day. I'll explain it in the future, but this video is running long, so y'all take it easy and be blessed.